Isiah Thomas and Adrian Dantley were teammates during the late 1980s. Together, they came within one win of an NBA championship, and also developed a deep-seated beef that still exists today. Huh? What? Why? That first part sounded so nice and promising. Well, it's hard to share a spotlight, and harder when your acrimonious relationship heightens a lot of the bad stuff that happened to you throughout your career. Here we go. A kid from Chicago, Isiah Thomas was drafted in 1981 to a terrible Pistons team. He was their great hope. He'd be the face of the new Pistons, a non-laughable, actually competitive team. Quick, agile, dangerous off the dribble, Zeke put up big numbers right away. But the team didn't get much better until 1984, when new coach Chuck Daly instituted a run-and-gun offense, ideal for Thomas's skill set. The next 2 seasons saw Thomas's personal accomplishments outpace the team's success. The Pistons were stuck, unable to break through to the next level. So that summer, Detroit went out and got someone to bolster their roster, Adrian Dantley. At just 6'5", Dantley had a dominating post-up game. He had the talent to be a franchise player, but that wasn't how his career played out. In his first 4 seasons, he was traded 3 times, despite being Rookie of the Year, then leading scorer, then second leading scorer to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. People assumed he had a bad attitude. Had to be something, right? Never mind, there were no actual reports of trouble from AD. After all those trades, Dantley landed with the Utah Jazz. He stayed for 7 years and won 2 scoring titles. With the Jazz, he finally had his team. Well, he was team captain, but he still served at the pleasure of coach and GM Frank Layden. Dantley and Layden were locked in a power struggle, which included Dantley sitting out games to force a contract negotiation, shouting matches, a suspension, and AD sitting out the entirety of the '86 playoffs with an injury the coach didn't totally buy. So, in the '86 offseason, the Jazz were happy to unload their disgruntled star to the Pistons. Once he departed, Utah had only nice things to say about the fact that Dantley was no longer on their team. Maybe there was something to those early accusations of a bad attitude, but Detroit still wanted him for his post-up prowess. They didn't really have a guy who scored on the block. Their big guy, Bill Laimbeer, mostly scored off jumpers. Detroit thought Dantley would be their missing piece to break him through to the next level. Not everyone was sold on this theory. Detroit ran the floor and let their point guard, Isiah Thomas, make the plays on the move. AD preferred a style where he set up on the block with his back to the basket, received the ball from the point guard, and then slowly worked on his defender to make the play. So, how are these styles going to mesh? Some doubted the 31-year-old Dantley could even keep up with Detroit's fast-paced game. Plus, both he and Thomas would want the ball in their hands. The beginning of the season was not promising. Detroit lost their first 2 games, and even when they tallied a few wins, they looked adrift. The problem was the offense. Chuck Daly had slowed things down to fit Dantley's game. Problem was, that didn't fit the rest of the team. In particular, Thomas was like, hey, what happened to the offense designed for my skill set? And he said that, or similar stuff, to Daly, who did switch Detroit back to their fast break game. Now Dantley had to figure out where he fit on what was, in Dantley's words, Isiah's team. Beef. If you're wondering what that smell is, it's beef. It wasn't like AD was totally boxed out. He was still the Pistons' leading scorer with 21.5 points per game. But that's a big drop for him. He was averaging closer to 30 points per game in Utah. He was still shooting above 50%, that hadn't changed. He was just getting far fewer looks now that the offense revolved around another star. There AD was, talented as anything, once again not being respected or valued. Story of his life. And this time, he had someone to blame. But hey, at the end of the season, Detroit was a better team with AD. Sure, they went down 2-0 against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and sure, some thought Dantley should do more and Thomas should do less, but Game 3 and 4 were in Detroit, and Zeke was confident. Before Game 3, he said, now we go to my house. Dantley noticed he didn't say our house. Beef. Again, what you're smelling is beef. Though, the next 2 games, Dantley didn't have much to complain about. The Pistons switched up their tactics and Dantley got the ball more. After the Game 3 win, AD gloated a bit. Just a quick "I told you so" mixed with a little jab at Isiah and the coach's allegiance to him. In Game 4's win, AD had 32 points to Isiah's 22 and gloated some more. Thomas wasn't happy, but took the high road and said he was just glad they were winning. Probably good to try and avoid controversy in the middle of the Eastern Conference Finals. Game 7, Dantley was knocked out cold diving for a loose ball in the third quarter, and that was pretty much the game. Detroit lost by 3. Post-game, Zeke failed to avoid controversy. Not with Dantley, though. In the locker room, crushed by disappointment, Thomas said of Larry Bird, "If he were black, he'd be just another good guy." In the days that followed, Thomas tried to walk back his comments. Bird said it was no big deal, but public opinion had shifted. Isiah was no longer quite so beloved. Now, that didn't mean the Pistons were going to give the team to someone else. Sorry, Dantley. In the '88 season, Dantley still complained about not getting the ball, but the Pistons improved, all the way to a finals berth. And they were up on the Lakers 3-2, in large part thanks to AD. He wasn't getting more shots, but in the Pistons' 3 wins, he couldn't miss. Game 6, however, had a different hero. Thomas put up 43 points, 25 in the third quarter, and that's after severely spraining his ankle. His performance was more inspirational fable than reality. The injured hero fighting through his pain with courage and heart to lead his men to victory, except the Pistons fell 1 point short of victory. Dantley, so instrumental in Detroit's first 3 wins, only scored 14 points, perhaps because Isiah was dominating the ball. In Game 7, Isiah was still pretty hurt, and Dantley had cooled off. Detroit lost the NBA Finals by 3 points. Whew. So close, but nothing. Let's jump to the middle of the following season. Detroit, attempting to run it back, had the second best record in the league, at which point they traded their leading scorer, who had led them to 3 finals wins the previous year. What? In return, they got Mark Aguirre, who was younger, friends with Thomas, and had slightly better numbers, but also was straight up hated by his current city. They said he had a bad attitude and was overweight, to the extent that local media nicknamed the stream of stories about Aguirre Pig Watch. What? Why would Detroit make this trade? Well, their record belied some trouble. They were losing to inferior Eastern Conference teams, and there was an air of dissatisfaction among the team, attributed to a chemistry problem. So maybe they needed to trade someone, but why Dantley? His numbers were down, he was playing less, and still complaining about not getting the ball enough. Alright, fine, that's not great for team chemistry. Also bad for chemistry were his recent clashes with Daly, who'd started benching AD in favor of a blossoming Dennis Rodman. After a late January game in which Dantley refused to come out for Rodman, one reporter asserted that Daly actually said he wanted to trade AD. I paraphrase. But Dantley believed he was traded for a different reason. It was Isiah Thomas's team, and Isiah Thomas didn't want to play with him. He wanted to play with his childhood friend, Mark Aguirre. Okay, I don't think I need to label it anymore. It's beef. What we're smelling and tasting and seeing and hearing and feeling is beef. So much beef. It wasn't just Dantley. A lot of people thought Thomas was behind the trade. Zeke was the butt of jokes. Saw some Piston fans turn on him. And his character was attacked. Dantley's mom called Thomas a little con artist. Thomas denied he had anything to do with the trade and said he wasn't even consulted. He wasn't polite to AD in his denial, but he wasn't giving us any spicy quotes either. Perhaps he'd learned from the Larry Bird debacle to speak carefully to the media. Sources said Thomas was hurt by the accusation. Thomas said he was shocked people would so easily believe he was a bad guy. And he was frustrated. He was finally emerging from the Larry Bird controversy, and now there was a new reason to hate on Isiah. Then, just over a month later, the Pistons hosted the Mavericks, AD's new team. Before tip-off, Dantley and Thomas shook hands. Oh, he's not letting go. I wish I could tell you what AD was saying right here, but neither guy has ever revealed that. So, we just have to use body language cues. They're in love! Just kidding, Dantley was livid and Thomas was super uncomfortable. Zeke airballed his first shot of the game. Perhaps whatever AD said irked him. Perhaps. But in general, the Pistons did very well without Dantley. Back in the finals, up on the Lakers 2-0, it looked like they were going to get their title, and soon. Can you imagine what Dantley was thinking, sitting at home watching these finals? Well, you don't have to. At halftime of Game 3, CBS called him up for an interview. Dantley put it simply, he got screwed, everybody knows it. And everybody knows whose fault it is. He didn't actually name Thomas, but he didn't really have to. After the game, another win, when Thomas learned of Dantley's comments, he said tears came to his eyes. But not because he felt bad for Dantley or lamented their poor relationship, but because he was sick of being the bad guy. He's about to win a ring, he didn't have anything to do with the trade, can people just let him be happy? The Pistons did win the championship in a sweep. Isiah got his ring, and I'm sure that helped dissipate any frustration. Dantley, despite being with Detroit for half of that championship season, did not get a ring. Though, consolation prize, the Pistons players voted to give AD a half share of the championship bonus pool. There's no record of how Isiah voted. After having the offseason to stew, Dantley had some more to say and did another interview. This time, he wasn't shy about using Isiah Thomas's name, or more derogatory names. He reiterated that Thomas was to blame for the trade, and aired new complaints. Thomas got special treatment from coaches and had the power to get players cut. Zeke didn't take the bait, simply responding, "I'm too old to get involved in childish games," which is of course calling Dantley childish, but public opinion was on Thomas's side here. People didn't say Thomas was an innocent good guy, but they were losing sympathy for Dantley. Nobody likes listening to a sad, broken record. Thomas got another ring with the Pistons in 1990, whereas Dantley broke his leg and his career petered out, ringless, by 1991. But AD, if it makes you feel any better, Thomas never got to escape the beef. After retiring in '94, he was asked about his role in the trade. He cited the old chemistry problems, etc., but was that right there? That's new, and contradicts his past statements. That opens up room for speculation. Or maybe not. In ESPN's 2014 30 for 30 about the Pistons, Jack McCloskey, GM at the time of the trade, said Isiah was not consulted and had nothing to do with the decision. And Dantley stuck to his story.
Isiah didn't like me and I didn't like him. And he went up to the management and said, "Hey, let's get rid of AD." That's what happened.
Time had not healed Dantley's wounds. He didn't watch the doc because of beef. And in an interview after the doc came out, Dantley quoted his mother in regard to Thomas. Seems AD never escaped this beef either. It's a beef that started with two guys who wanted the ball. Dantley kinda needed it after a career of frustrations. But the other guy got it. And the ring. And then another ring. Isiah Thomas is clearly the winner of this beef. But he loses a little bit too. Whether or not he engineered the trade, his reputation suffered a permanent black mark. And it's a bummer. But, try telling that to Adrian Dantley. Thank you so much for watching. This was our 100th episode of Beef History. I recorded it while wearing a party hat, but you could probably tell from my voice. Here are a couple other beautiful beeves, and feel free to subscribe. For Secret Base, I'm Clara Morris. Good night and good game.